Hi, welcome to Pay Entry's weekly webinar. I'm Kathy Graham. We're going to get started with a webinar that I know you've all been just chomping at the bit to hear about, the President's recent executive orders and how they impact your business. Hopefully we will have some answers for you. During the session, if you could type your questions as we go along in the question box on your screen, then at the end of the session, we will make sure that we get those answered for you if there are answers. And with this type of legislation, there are always still unanswered questions. So let's just see what we're going to find out today. So how do they impact your business? On March the 8th, President Trump signed a series of executive memorandums and orders regarding, number one, Social Security payroll tax deferral, then enhanced unemployment payments, eviction moratoriums, and student loan relief. All of these were effective the same day, September the 1st, and they all run through the end of this year, December 31st. The one that I know that most of you are interested in, if not everyone, is the first one, and that's the Social Security payroll tax deferral. So on August the 28th, the Treasury Department and the IRS issued Notice 2020-65. And this notice allowed employers the option to defer the employees' portion of the Social Security taxes, which is 6.2%, from September 1st to December 31st, 2020. This does not include the Medicare piece of this. So it is just the Social Security taxes. The law applies, or the option applies, to those employees whose biweekly earnings are less than $4,000. And that eligibility determination is made each pay period. So it's this biweekly period, someone makes $4,000, and next pay period they don't, because of commissions or bonuses or whatever. They would be eligible one week and not the next. So it is pay period by pay period. There is no deferral available if the employee's taxable wages are more than $4,000 for a biweekly pay period, so it is not prorated. It's $4,000 and it's cut off. Some key takeaways from this Treasury notice. One is that employers do remain liable for collecting the full amount of taxes deferred from September the 1st to December the 31st. Now, I want to stop and let you know that everything that we're talking about today is what we know today, and this can be added to or changed over the next 2 weeks or so. And we will make sure that we update you as we learn of any changes. But right now, and next year, unless there is legislation that's passed that forgives these taxes, you as the employer will remain liable for collecting it and paying it. The total deferred taxes have to be withheld between January the 1st and April the 30th of 2021. And that can be spread out depending on the number of pay periods they have. So after April the 30th, though, penalties and interest and additions to tax will begin to accrue on your employer account for those amounts that have not been repaid according to the guidance. Now, there is talk about these amounts being forgiven, but that would take Congress passing a law that would provide that forgiveness. Another takeaway from this notice is that if an employee is not employed during January 1 to the April 30th period, the employer is still on the hook. They are still obligated to pay the total deferred taxes for the employee. Employers are permitted under this notice to make arrangements to collect the total taxes due, but they will have to But the guidance is very silent on this method. You can take them to court or garnish their last paycheck, although there are state laws that prohibit some types of garnishments. So how are you going to report these deferrals? Well, we know we're going to need more guidance on that because deferrals have to be reported on the Form 941, and it's currently in draft form only. So it has not been released for this year. However, the information that we have indicates that line 13B will include the deferred amount of the Social Security tax. And line 24 will include the deferred amount of the employee share. As I mentioned, more instructions on this should be forthcoming with the release of this revised 941 form, which hopefully will be soon. Are all wages and earnings eligible for the tax deferral? This is one of the questions that we've gotten, and the answer is no. Those earnings paid by an employer under the FFCRA are not eligible. So if you have an employee that you paid or you're paying for being out because of the COVID virus or due to the fact that their children don't have a school to go to or a daycare to go to, those amounts are not included as earnings under this ruling. Another question that we've gotten is there required notice for employees? Well, there's no requirement in this legislation for employers or in this memorandum for employers that choose to participate to notify employees of this program. However, it makes very good sense that if you're planning to implement the program and defer Social Security taxes for an employee, that they be well aware of it and that they actually are in agreement with it when you do it. But there's no requirement for you to do it at this time. There's no requirement for a notice or a sign off by the employee. And we're hoping to get more guidance following this week as to whether or not deferring an employee's tax requires their permission. Deductions normally do require permission, and you would think that deferral of a deduction would also not or require some sort of sign off by the employee. I see a question in here right now that I'm going to go ahead and answer because it's very pertinent. Do we have to defer the taxes? Do employers have to defer the taxes? We have been told, and the Treasury Secretary says that this is an optional program for employers. Okay, let's go through the rest of this, and then we'll get into some of the questions that are coming up. The enhanced unemployment benefits, remember that up until July of 31st of this year, there was a $600 a week federal supplement to the unemployment benefits. And that was obviously an incentive for people not to want to come back to work, but it was very generous and helpful for those who needed the income because they had lost their jobs. The presidential memorandum that just came out on the 8th awarded an additional $400 a week in extra benefits until the end of the year. However, states must provide 1/4 of the cost, which would obviously be $100, and many states aren't financially able or willing to support this effort. The benefits, though, will be $300 a week from the federal government. It does, however, exclude those who qualify for less than $100 a week in benefits. And $100 a week in benefits is not a very low amount. A lot of people get 30% of their pay or 20% of their pay in unemployment. So this is impacting millions of people who have low earning jobs or had low earning jobs, and will actually exclude them from getting the $300. There was another memorandum on eviction moratoriums, which usually doesn't impact employers, and it does rely on a public health law that was intended to prevent the spread of an illness back in 1944, called the Public Service Act. There is a 4-month moratorium on residential evictions, and it applies to individuals earning less than $99,000 a year. And the last thing that was included in this group of memorandums was the continued deferral of student loan payments. This is through the end of 2020 with no interest accrued during that time. And this is a good thing for students. It's a good thing for companies that are supporting a student loan assistance program, because you can actually, pretty much put that on hold until the payments start again for the employee, if you'd like. So what should you do if it's the Social Security deferral program, and we're going to talk a lot about that in the question section? Then you need to decide if you're going to participate, because it is an option for you. And if it is something you want to participate in, you have to contact your pay entry client advocate, the person that helps you with your payroll, so they can walk you through what you need to do in the system and what we need to do to get this started. Then you need to let employees know what's happening. You may have someone that wants to opt out of that. There's no clear guidance on whether or not you can do that if you as a company are putting in the program, but it would stand to reason that they could opt out. We don't cannot take a position on that right now because we haven't been given guidance by the government. But be prepared to answer employee questions, whether or not you do put this in or not. A lot of employees are not aware of this. Word gets around though, and then someone will wonder why you're not doing it, and then you'll need to explain to them why you're not doing it. So make sure you already have a written position statement on this, so that you across the board within your management group would be able to address any questions that come up. On the unemployment benefit increase, the eviction moratorium, and the student loan relief, there's really nothing you have to do there. The student loan relief, you could suspend your student loan assistance during this time, because the students aren't paying anything during this time. So that may be something you'd want to look into to limit the funds going out this year. And like all of our webinars, they're short and sweet with a lot of questions at the end. I'm going to start with the first one on here. Cheryl has a question: if we've missed our first September payroll, if we choose to defer, let's see what happened to that. If we choose to defer, how will this be handled? You cannot go retroactively, so it will start with your next payroll. One thing we do know is that it cannot be retroactive. And we're going to go up here to the top. I think I answered this one for Lisa. Do we need to notify employees if we choose not to defer? That's up to you. There's no law that says you have to. One of the things about all of these memorandums is so let's talk about the Social Security deferral program. There are no penalties for not participating. There is no guidance about whether you have to notify employees or not. So if no one asks any questions, you may not need to put anything out to answer their questions. Another question Kathy has is, are employers required to do it? As I mentioned earlier, it is an optional plan currently. For federal employees, their next paycheck will have the deferral in it across the board. So all federal agencies are participating. And here's the question: if an employer opts in, can employees opt out individually? The law's not clear on that, but it makes sense to me that an employee has the right to change their withholding on their W-4 so that they would have the right to opt out in this. This has not been clearly addressed, though. I heard there was a chance that this is about the PPP loan forgiveness certification documentation was going to be waived. Is that true? Not at this time that I've heard. We do try to keep up with what's going on with the PPP stuff, and it's just been postponed. I think I saw this week somewhere where the period of time had been postponed for forgiveness. So here's another question. So if it's optional, can you offer it and let employees opt in to participate or not? It is up to you to do that. Yes, you can do pretty much what you want to. I'm not sure how our system handles that. I think that some of this is manual on your part because our system cannot be modified quickly enough to handle for this time frame. And another question here, can you select some but not all employees to participate? I would be very careful how you select employees to participate in this program because it could be seen as some sort of discrimination. And I would assume that if an employee that was not selected had a problem with that, it could be questionable. So there's no law that says that you can't, but I would be careful about making a selection of employees. The next question is, do you recommend deferring the tax for all employees as a default instead of asking them what they want? I don't recommend anything because I'm not an attorney, but if you decide to do it as a company, then you certainly can default them into it, but let them know that it's happening. The question, what if one staff member wants to participate but others do not? Can an employer participate partially, or is it an all or none? It's whatever you want it to be. So you can decide that. I think we answered that one. So just so I'm clear on the Social Security deferrals, employees will have more Social Security taken out January 1st to April the 30th, should we decide to do this. That is correct. They'll basically have double the Social Security taken out in the first 4 months of next year. And Karen has a question, can a company not offer this deferral? It appears that you can just not offer it. And I tell you, a lot of companies are not offering it because they don't want to be held liable for the taxes should someone leave employment this year and the taxes come due next year, and it's the employer's responsibility to pay that tax regardless of whether the employee is still there or not. So as of this time, if we choose to not participate in the tax deferral program, we do nothing, correct? That is correct, Alexander. The next question, what if an employee earns $3,900 and defers the tax, but in 2021 their income drops to say $500? Is the payback at 6.2% or is the deferral treated like an employee loan? And 2021 payback is treated regardless of 2021 income. It is based on the actual amount that they do not remit in taxes. So if 6.2%, it has nothing to do with their income in 2021. It's basically like this money is just being deferred into, the taxes are being deferred into next year. So they would owe the tax next year regardless of their income. A question about, do you suggest we poll employee interest before opting in or out? That's a mixed bag right there. Anytime you poll employees, you'll probably get 50% that want to and 50% that don't. Then you have to decide still. I think that it probably should be a corporate decision on whether or not you want to take the risk of having to pay back taxes that may not be forgiven next year. It says, please confirm if program implemented, not all staff required to participate. That's true. You can do whatever you want to do. As the employer, you can allow people to opt in, opt out. It is whatever you choose to do. And here's a question. Do employees have to sign some form indicating they do not want to participate in the deferral? There's no rule that you have to do that, but it makes sense to me to allow people to opt out of something that's tax related that they don't want to participate in. But there is no guidance on this right now. A question Scott has is, do you think there will be a penalty if we do not opt in? There are no penalties associated with non-participation that's been talked about. And what is the incentive for an employer to participate? Well, that's a good question. I guess if all of your employees want to defer and have an extra 6.2% of their money in their pocket and they're willing to pay it back next year, then you would be pleasing your employees. That would be the only incentive for an employer to participate. Sharice wants to know what do we advise our clients to do to override Social Security? Sharice, you would need to reach out to the client advocate here and ask them the process of doing that in our system. We do have a workaround set up for it, but we are asking you to call your customer service person at Pay Entry, and we can help you calculate or figure that out. And a lot of the questions here are, is it all or nothing? If some want to do the deferral, employees, but the employer doesn't want to participate, it's okay for you to say, no, we're not going to participate in this. It may create some sort of a morale issue for some people, but not everyone. And is it all or nothing? And can you defer for some employees and not others? Yes. If you decide to participate, then you can do what you want to do because there hasn't been any guidance and there are no penalties. The next question Maria has is, what will MPay be doing to accommodate the tax deferrals, like in specific earnings, deduction codes? We are working on another deduction code or an override code that you would be using for earnings that would not have Social Security deducted. And we will be issuing something to the clients that contact their customer service or client advocate to say that they want to participate. We don't feel like there will be many, but if there are, we will walk through this process with the individual companies that want to participate in this deferral. This question that Ryan has, do you track the deferral as subject wages with no taxes withheld on the employee, or is exempt and report subject wages later? The way that it works in the system is going to be discussed with your client advocate, and basically it is there would be no Social Security tax withheld on the employee, and it would be cashed for later reporting on the 941 and on an individual basis next year. How will you, next question, how will you let us know when you get more guidance on whether or not deferring an employee tax requires their permission? We don't know. It's hard to decide when the IRS is going to do anything that they do because it always seems to be after the fact. I mean, they're still coming out with forgiveness rules on the PPP loans, and that's been out there for a long time. So as people ask questions of the IRS, they develop Q&As and then they answer the questions. So at this point in time, whatever you do without any guidance from the IRS is not going to cause you a penalty. It's just you take the action that your company feels that is appropriate for your group. I would err on the side of caution, because if an employee's tax liability is changed or shifted, then I would think that the employee should sign something. But that is up to you as a company. It isn't written into the rules yet. Here's a question. If we do not defer and then the government decides to waive the deferred amounts, would the employees that did not defer get a break on what they paid? No, they would not. It's only those who are deferring their taxes until next year. Have they addressed rules for paying the deferred amounts back? It does not matter. It seems at this point in time, they can pay, you can take it out of each paycheck. You can take it once a month. You could take it at the end. There are no rules at this point in time. As long as it's all paid back by the end of April, that's all they care about. Suzette asks, what happens if the employee who deferred leaves the company? The company is on the hook for paying it back in the next year. So employers are always responsible for paying these taxes, and if the employee is not there and they have deferred these taxes, then the employer's left holding the bag. Can the employer take out a lump sum of the deferment, the first payroll in 2021, as long as they meet the minimum wage laws? I think that might be a hardship for some people to have that much taken out at once. It depends on how much it is, and there are no rules. So at this point in time, unless they come up with different set of rules for how it must be repaid, you can do what you want to do. Here's a question that no one's asked, and I wondered why. Does the employer still pay their portion? Yes, it's not a deferral for the employer, only for the employee. Where in the notice does it state that this is optional, Maria? It actually says that I believe I'd have to pull it up. The language is very vague. It says may participate. The Treasury Department, the head of Secretary of the Treasury has come out and said that it is optional for employers to participate. So we're waiting for a formal statement, but right now it appears to be optional, to be a voluntary program. Question, who do we talk to find out how to set this up in pay entry next gen for the employees that want to opt in? You would need to call your client advocate at pay entry. Call our customer service person. And I think this means, do you have any suggested communication drafted for the deferral? We do not at this time. Once we get more guidance from the Treasury Department, we may have something that we could use. But right now, it would just be telling them, what we're telling you in this presentation, and that your company has either elected to do it or not do it. When should we expect to see the updated 941 form in M3? That's whenever the IRS releases the revised form. We already have the draft ready to roll, so we're just waiting on them to finalize it. So it would be very quickly after the release. Let's see. Carol has a question. If it's waived next year, can the employees get the money? Well, if they've deferred taxes and they're not going to get any more money, they're just not going to have to pay it back because it's waived. They're not paying it the 6.2%. They're getting it in their check, in their pockets now. So next year, the determination is, do they have to pay it back, or do they not? Is it forgiven? And that's not known at this point in time. But those employees who did not defer will not get any money back at that time. Here's a question. In pay entry, we're not supposed to do any adjustments with Social Security. How will this work if an employer is going to move forward with this? Your client advocate will be helping you with that. There are some codes that we're going to be using as a workaround. The same question we addressed earlier. If we don't participate and in 2021 Congress forgives payback of the deferral, what happens to those who did not participate? Nothing. Life goes on and they continue to have their payroll deductions as is. They're not going to get any money back because they didn't defer it. Steve, if you could, you have a question that's about M3. If you could contact your person here at Pay Entry and ask them that question, they'll have the answer for you. How to accommodate the deferral for those not on Pay Entry. I believe that it is going all the way down to M3, which is our mothership. So I believe that it would probably be a different process, but it would still be available. As a service bureau, will we need to supply our Pay Entry rep with the clients that want to do the tax deferral? The changes will not be applied to all of our clients. Maria, that is correct. We would wait to hear from you regarding the clients that want to do the tax deferral. We would not be applying it across the board. Kathy has a really good question, and no one has asked this. I thought about this too. Is the $4,000 limit pre-tax? Very good question, Kathy. I thought about this morning. It doesn't say. It says earnings, taxable earnings. So I would assume not, because taxable earnings, FICA is taken out of, I'm sorry, FICA is not taken out of like things like FSAs, but it is on your retirement plans, your 401ks. So it depends on whether or not it is taxable income. Very good question. If an employee leaves and during the first part of next year, does the deferral not follow them into their next job? The deferral ends on 12/31. The payback of the Social Security would not follow them to their next job because the current employer is responsible for paying the taxes in this year for all employees. So no, it would not follow them to their next job. Can't the employee pay back the taxes when they file their individual taxes versus holding the employer responsible? Currently, that is not an option. We'll see if the IRS comes up with that. It could be an option going into 2021. If the company is not going to participate, do we still need to fill out the 941 form? The 941 form is a tax form that you file quarterly regardless, because that's where you pay your taxes. So you would still be filling out the 941 form because you're still paying taxes. Steve, I will reach out to you afterwards and see who you would talk to about tech support for M3. Normally, we do have a service team that deals only with our clientele that have their own businesses, the licensees. So I will find out who you should be talking to, and I will get back to you via email. Maria, that since the system currently tries to rebalance employee Social Security withholdings to the 6.2%, will this functionality be disabled across the board, or will the specific earning codes stop this rebalancing from happening? It will have to stop the rebalancing, or it won't work. So I'm assuming that our systems development people are working on that as we speak. Okay, that seems to be the last question. If you decide after this is over you do have questions, please feel free to reach out to me. My email address is cgram@payentry.com, very straightforward, and I can help you as much as I can with the laws that we have right now, or the information we have right now. We will do an update if there are updates that come out in the next week or two, since the federal government is having to comply with this and all of their payroll systems are being changed as we speak. then I'm sure we're going to hear more guidance on what the rules are, and we'll share that with you. We will also be sending out a copy of this PowerPoint to everyone who attended today, and the recording will be available on our website at www.payentry.com/webinars. So I hope you have learned something today. If I missed something, please email me and let me know. I am happy to talk with you at any time. And I hope you have a great afternoon and a great Labor Day weekend. Thanks for attending.